Hello and welcome to the This Works For Me Virtual Summit. I'm your host, Permpe Watson. I am the director of the Faculty Development Center at Morris State University. In this summit, I will be having conversations with individuals who will be sharing practical strategies that have worked for them. And we hope that you will find many of these strategies useful to help you succeed in higher education and beyond. With me today is Dr. Nicole Arrighi. Dr. Arrighi, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm delighted to have you. And so I'm going to open the floor to you for a moment. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
I'm Dr. Nicole Arrighi, professor and EdTech coordinator at Tennessee State University in Nashville, Tennessee. Prior to my time at Tennessee State University, I was a former Metro teacher for about 5 years, working in both elementary and the middle school sector. And then also with regards to the EdTech program, I work with graduate students who are interested in using technology in meaningful ways. So I get to have the best of both worlds with helping those teachers who want to enter the field, and then also those teachers that want to enrich what they're currently doing by using technology in a meaningful manner.
Wow, seems as if you're doing a lot of great work there. And I would like to just ask you, because the title of your strategy is Using an Innovative Feedback Revision Strategy to Help Students Succeed. Help us understand what impressed you to start using this strategy.
My lovely college students were the inspiration for this strategy because I saw that when they were submitting their assignments, they really were not making the best use of feedback. And one of the things that we know in higher education is that students will always say, you know, I turned in a paper and all I received was a grade or a great job. And so we oftentimes took the brunt of that, of not always providing the best feedback. But then from my colleagues that provided great feedback, I noticed that my students weren't really making the most of it. And particularly for teacher education candidates, there's a deficiency measure that I see, because if they're not making the connections between the, and not so much even the deficiencies, but they're not making connections between areas or components that I'm identifying as points that I want them to grow, then it's going to have a detriment when they're actually out into the field, when they're being evaluated by their principal, and certainly going to possibly have a negative impact on the students that they're working with. So I wanted to kind of give value to what is the idea of not just feedback, but forcing them to do something with the feedback. So on this journey, I initially would say, I would like for you to fix this, or I would like for you to think about this assignment or this product that you've turned in, take it to the next level. And they would think about it for maybe 2 or 3 seconds, and then they would go on to the next assignment. And then my feelings was hurt because I put in all this effort and energy, and then I get nothing in return. So I said, okay, I need to do something more. I want them to now revise. And so then the next stage was to have them to revise, and I would give credit for the modifications that they made to their assignment. And I still saw this gap. The students who were self-motivated, who really wanted to see improvement, would make the feedback, would make the changes and revise their work, receive their extra points and move forward. The other students that did not address the revisions, again, I have a competency issue, because what are they going to gain? Particularly when I found myself making the same comments to the same students throughout the semester. I need to see APA citations week 1, take off 3 points. 2 weeks later, same thing. I'm not seeing citations, taking 3 more points off. So nothing was really registering. Then the next semester, I said, you know what? I'm going to scrap all of that. I'm now going to require them to make revisions. I'm not going to give them credit for it. It's going to actually be a requirement. And if they don't address the revisions and don't look at the feedback that I'm providing them, and apply those comments to their future assignments, there's going to be an even heavier penalty because they should be growing, not staying stagnant. And it was painful because what they had to process was, particularly for teacher education candidates, at a certain point when you're working with juniors and seniors and even our graduate students, it moves from being student to college professor to colleague to future colleague. That if we were in a school site, if you're not addressing your deficiencies, you are causing an educational liability that I am going to have to address as your partner teacher, or the teacher in the next grade level is going to have to address. And then there's this domino effect. And whether you recognize it now, that impacts everybody in higher ed, your general core instructors. So I had to really kind of educate them on the power of revisions. And it was painful. They did not like it. The first semester that I did it, the comments on my evaluations were pretty heartbreaking. However, as I stuck to my guns and moved forward, I noticed that the conversation started to change. The students started to really process, not even so much the idea of constructive criticism, but what do I need to do to always make sure that I'm efficient for the end user? The end user is not Dr. Arrighi, my college professor. The end user is Johnny, the third grade student who needs to understand fractions, or Paul, the 12th grade, civics student who's getting ready to go to college. Like, there is an end user that's not the person standing in front of you. So that idea changed how they looked at assignments going forward. I was making comments and feedback to new issues, not the same issues. And then ultimately what I don't want to say finally succumbed to, but what they finally embraced was the idea is, if I am not reflective, if I'm not looking at my work as a practitioner, if I'm not turning in assignments that are workforce ready, then I'm hurting myself. And I need to catch those things before I even submit them to Dr. Arrighi. So those types of dialogues were things that I was not having before that I appreciate having now. It's a richer instructional experience.
Wow. I really like the motive behind this strategy and just how you implement it. You're not just looking at the short-term goal of the student getting a good grade in the class. You're really thinking about the impact that it would have on their career and all the other people that will be impacted by what you are doing in your class. So I really have to commend you for that. And it seems as if it's really making a change in the lives of the students.
Yes, and one of the things that we're hearing now, again, is this idea of being workforce ready. And the process of revisions is one that we really don't address enough, because to revise just kind of means like, oh, I made a mistake, let me make it better. But that idea of making it better has to be more than just a grade change, but a efficiency change. In every other facet of our lives, we expect individuals to be efficient on the first time. If you're putting gas in my car, you can't revise it. You either put the right gas in my car or you don't. If I'm getting my hair done, you either fix it the right way that I want it, my nail, in everything. Even when you go to McDonald's, we're expecting them to be efficient. I ordered a #1 with fries and a drink, and you sit there in your car and you look at your order and you don't move until you are sure that they don't have to revise your order. So in education, I wanted my students to understand that there are those same consequences. And even though it may not be in that immediate moment, our students deserve better. And our students deserve educators who are ready to self-evaluate themselves before a principal walks into the room, to sit down and look at their lesson plan and to determine, have I planned for the best instructional experience? Now, if things don't work, certainly I'm going to make revisions, but I'm going to go into that process trying to provide the best experience, not just to provide something that gets me through the day.
Wow. Exactly. And so would you say that this strategy would work for all faculty and students?
I actually believe that it would, only because we have so many individuals at the college level that are working, right now. I mean, we definitely have a different model from students who used to solely just focus on school. So our students, I definitely feel, understand the idea of being competent and being competent driven, since many things that we do nowadays are falling under this auspice of competency-based learning and competency-based results, giving badges for when you master a skill or a craft. So even if you were in English, English composition, English 110 or 1010, I still think there are mechanics that would help them to understand, if you get this now, you can apply it to every research paper that you do for the rest of your college career. And once you understand how to frame a research paper and the structure, you're going to follow that same structure into your master's program, into a doc program. But if you have writing deficiencies, they will linger and someone's going to catch it. It's going to make writing a dissertation so daunting because you could have mastered it right there in your freshman year of undergraduate. So it may take a little bit of work and thinking for different professions, but I certainly think every faculty member and every student can benefit from looking at themselves from the standpoint of the reviewer and saying, am I turning in the best product? Because ultimately, when I apply for a job, when I'm building connections and relationships, what are we wanting from people? We're wanting to see their most efficient, most effective self. And if someone is, even in this discussion right now, if I'm not willing to give you my best, you're not going to revise this conversation. You're just going to find someone else that can do it better and have it, because time is money. And so they have to understand that in the most simplest models. And so hopefully that will come across to faculty members and students.
Wow, exactly. And speaking of time is money, I would like to touch a little bit on the time factor here. Could you help us understand, is this sounds a little bit time consuming to some, it might sound a little bit time consuming to some. How would you address that question? What's the time factor involved?
Sure. Well, most of my colleagues love Stephen Covey, so you're beginning with the end in mind. And basically, I just started with their final product and I backtracked to what are all the skills that I want to see in their final product. And those are my revision points. And so in organizing my syllabus, and this is one of the resources that I'll share, so hopefully it will make sense. I took all the assignments in my semester and just divided them up into 4 quarters. And I was able to identify what were the core competencies that I wanted to see for the 3 preceding quarters that will lead ultimately into the final product. Once I identified those, I basically outlined, these are assignments that are, I don't want to say practice assignments, but these are assignments in which I don't necessarily need to see revisions. I just want to see your thought for what it is. And then I actually have assignments labeled, and they're actually on the sheet that say UP in parentheses for unit product, unit project. And those are assignments that have to be revised. So I'm giving you weeks and opportunities beforehand to make sure that the students get feedback, they understand what skill sets I'm looking for, but on those major quarter assignments, they know this is something that I'm going to revise, and hopefully they will catch those ideas and those concepts in advance so they don't have to make revisions. So once you have a sequence, you may not start off with as many assignments as I have listed on my sheet, but start small. And again, just help your students to understand that, again, I'm going to give you an opportunity to practice. And it's almost just like a football game. You're going to have your regular practices, but in that game, I need to know that you understand what I'm looking for. If you don't, you're going to have to go back and revise, and you're not going to earn more points for making revisions on something that you've already had a chance to practice. So again, that's where the time comes in, because it does still require work on the faculty end to make sure that you're giving sufficient feedback on all of those preliminary tasks. But then it also causes more work for the student, because on the document, it actually says that they acknowledge that they have to address all their revisions to even have their work submitted in this final product. And for the actual project, if they don't submit it, they're not even able to earn an A. So then it now becomes another conversation on what does an A actually mean. Well, if I'm going to an A medical doctor, I know that a medical doctor that's an A surgeon, I'm probably not going to worry about. Anyone with even a B+ medical doctor, I'm going to look a little sketchy at it and say, well, what do you not know how to do? So that resolves that question when students are saying, well, how do I get an A in this course? You address all of your revisions and you demonstrate the skill sets that you're going to master in this class and apply in every other class you have afterwards.
Wow. And you know, this really is a noble strategy, I'm telling you, with the potential to have great impact as you have been experiencing. But I imagine that someone might be out there that might be saying, I don't think I can do that with my students. You mean deduct points if they have not really incorporated the feedback? I'm not quite sure. What would you say to that person who is saying, you know, Dr. Arrighi, that strategy has worked for you. I'm not sure it would work for me. What would be some baby steps, some preliminary steps that that person could just take to even just get your foot wet with using this strategy?
I would say start with a rubric and try it out with one assignment or maybe your exam or a research paper. That way it's not high stress for the faculty member. What you want to see is what value you are receiving as a faculty member from the feedback that you're giving. And the question that you have to ask yourself is, if you're not going to get a receipt of information retained, then why do we need feedback in the first place? Why even write on the research paper? Just say, thank you for turning your paper in and give a grade. So I would say just start small, maybe have it as a component of the rubric in which if you have a 100-point exam, maybe you have 80 points for the actual assignment and then 20 points for the revision. So that way you have an opportunity to practice it at least one time a semester. It may just be a midterm experiment and not necessarily a requirement for the whole semester. But ask your students what they gained from completing the revisions and what that looked like to have to respond on what they didn't retain. And I think that would be a really great and beneficial starting point.
Yes, and I just like what you're saying, you know, start small. Sometimes we really try to achieve so much, too quickly with a particular strategy. And so that's great advice. And I am really glad that you have agreed to share a resource with us. Could you just tell the viewer what you'll be sharing?
Yes, so this is actually, again, an excerpt from my syllabus, and it's a learning contract. And basically, again, it has all of my assignments for the semester. I'm on a point system so that the students understand that they can self-calculate their grade throughout. And one of the things that it has at the bottom is the fact that they have to sign, and it actually is a bonus point, so it's on the actual grade sheet, but they actually have to sign and say that they understand, and I'll just read it really quickly. I'm aware that this course is based on a point system that will determine my final grade at the end of the semester. In addition, I'm aware of the revisions policy and its impact towards course and professional dispositions expected by the teacher and the teacher education program. I further accept responsibility to manage my points throughout the semester and will discuss any concerns prior to the final grade being awarded. It does acknowledge that on the actual sheet that if they do not address their revisions, that there's an automatic one-letter grade deduction. So we talk about that, we have a conversation, and we reflect on it, and they hash it out. I said, if you don't even feel like it's worth the 10 bonus points, don't even sign the contract. It's still in the syllabus, but I want you to understand what's expected.
Wow.
Excuse me, but once we have that dialogue, it again changes their understanding of they're in college, but we're also training them to be professionals and having a conversation on what it is to be as efficient as you can the first go around.
Wow, I like that. It's almost similar because you are really preparing them for the work world.
Yes.
And a part of work is signing a contract, and you really need to know what you're getting into. And you're inviting them in this conversation to say, here is the situation, and here's the option to sign it. And it seems as if your students have been signing this.
And what I found is that a lot of students never read the syllabus. So this was one sheet in the actual syllabus, and it says like you agree to all of these things. And so I actually have a copy of this for every student. And again, it's self-serving. And so when they have questions, why did I get a B? You didn't address your revisions, but I did A work, and I'm like, A work with no revisions is B work. That's
wow.
Sorry. It's B work. And then I have that. So when we're talking about grade appeals, it's just, here's your handwriting. Here's your signature on the learning contract, and thank you very much. So there's multiple applications from this, but ultimately I do want them to understand that as they enter the workforce, your employer does not give you a revision contract. They expect you to be proficient. That's one of the things that, for faculty, it's called tenure. So if you're not efficient, then they don't have to give you job security in other industries. If you're not proficient and you don't self-improve and self-reflect on yourself, there are consequences. So I just want to teach them that early.
Exactly. Wow. Well said. I'm just wondering if in the last minute or so, you have a challenge or encouragement for our viewers today.
What was the question again?
Do you have a challenge or encouragement for our viewers today?
Oh, certainly. Well, one, I just, in terms of encouragement, I really think it's important for faculty to know that we put a lot into what we do for a semester, quarter, whatever the term, your semester term may be, but there's a lot in terms of what we do. And this particular strategy shifts conversation from it just being faculty student driven to actually having profound conversations about how a student can grow and how you can mentor your students through your course and not just instruct and evaluate. And so if nothing else, even if you don't like the full scope of this policy, I really would encourage you to give value and certainly give appreciation to the work that you do with your students and how they can make meaning of that so that you do feel rewarded when you see them improve, not semesters from now, but right there in your class when you see that growth.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arrighi, for sharing with us today. You really, provided some good strategy for our viewers. And I'd also like to thank our viewers for tuning in today. And I would encourage you to share this conversation with others. And remember that all are welcome to subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you again in the next episode of This Works For Me Virtual Summit. See you soon.